My name is Tohe Kim, just introduced. Please allow me to share my screen. I thought that I'm given 20 minutes for presentation before. Uh, If my presentation gets longer, I think there are people who might doze off. My name is Tohe Kim. About 2 years ago, I've been conducting research on migrant students in Korea, and my presentation today is on one of the researches I conducted, which are not released yet. The reason why I conducted this research is that I found that migrant students, especially from Asian countries, I wanted to see the experiences that they have outside the university in the labor market and what are strategies that they use and implement in order to negotiate their status outside the university. As you know, the number of students from abroad drastically increased. So there are over 150,000, about 70% up compared to 2011. In 2016, the number of students exceeded 100,000. Since then, there are 150,000 students coming in every year. So that includes student graduates and undergraduates and postgraduates. After COVID-19, the number of students coming from abroad decreased in 2 consecutive years, down by 4.9%, which is not significant. And by nationality, I'm sure you know, China accounts for the biggest portion, followed by Vietnam, Mongolia. So all of them are Asian countries. And one interesting thing that we need to pay attention to is that although it is not included in our research, the number of our Chinese students is decreasing, and that is replaced by students from Central Asia. And of course, that is not included in our research this time. Students from China many say and study in Seoul, but those who from Central Asian countries, they study in universities in other local areas. And already there's many research done on the increasing number of students from abroad. And I think those researches point out a reason as a quite common element behind the increasing number of students. As a foreign student are not included in the quota of the student, so they are contributing to recovering financial difficulties. That's why local universities have many systems to encourage and to attract students from abroad. At the same time, compared to universities in Singapore, Hong Kong, and other Western universities, the tuition fee in Korea is cheaper than those in other countries. So I think those migrant students from abroad want to study in Korea, meaning that they can get hold of the degree in other countries, and also they can learn Korean language so that they can have a better jobs. I think that also includes the passion of the students from abroad, especially other Asian countries. That is the common reason pointed out by research. As I said earlier, those migrant students hold quite interesting social status in Korea. They are students and potential social supremacy. That is one considerable element, and also there's expectation for them. So compared to other migrant workers or refugees and marriage migrants, it is highly likely that the Korean people treat them better than others. But still, nonetheless, depends on the race and also ethnicity and also the origin country. They are not completely free from discriminatory treatment. So outside the university and campus in labor market, they come across with various people, and I want you to see what kind of discrimination, what kind of treatment they receive, and what strategies they implement in order to be away from it. And also that tells us that how the Korean society discriminates them in a multifaceted aspect. And at the same time, one another purpose of my research is that we had a prejudice against students from abroad, just treating them as a student, treating them as a beneficiary of our system, because they do have various goals and purposes, and also they are a member of our society, earning income in our society. So I wanted to draw a new picture out of it. So this research was conducted between 2018 and 2020. I conducted the interview on 18 people, mainly those from 전라남도 and 경상북도, both undergraduates and postgraduates, Vietnam and Mongolia. The students from those two countries, the majority of my interviewees, plus 2 out of 5 graduate students received a scholarship from the point they enter, and the rest had to pay the tuition fee by themselves. And to help you better understand about this issue, I interviewed them and I better explain to you how they enter into the labor market. We need to know what kind of work and what kind of job that they find out, so that we can better understand about what their life is in Korea. And no matter what the reason is, I found that they entered the labor market through quite similar path. Most of the university students, they enter the Korea as a language student, meaning that they are not very good at Korean when they first entered the Korea. So that means they had to depend on ethnic community to find out part-time job. So that was the commonality that I found. And of course, there are our friends who are from the same country. However, still, they are not very good at Korean. So in the case of Mongolia and Vietnam, ethnic communities centered around migrant workers and marriage migrants quite strong. So they introduced those students to part-time jobs. That's how they got into labor market. For example, the student from Mongolia who are in the 20s, he and she FaceTimed the cousin in Ulsan and found a job in a factory in Ulsan. The cousin lived in Korea as a migrant worker for more than 15 to 20 years. So just like this case. So with the help of a pan-ethnic community, they entered the labor market, meaning that they are likely to find a job as low-skilled workers. But since they are a student, there are other uniqueness. They need time to study. They need to take the class. Even the class takes place online, they preferred job that they can adjust work time if it is possible. Because when they work in the factory, it means that they have to be there from 9 to 6. So they prefer the seasonal jobs so that they can flexibly adjust the work time. And cleaning motels, because that means they work during the nighttime, and serving, and also quick delivery, which gives them more freedom to spend their time as they wish. So these are the jobs that they preferred in Korea. And the labor market as well, by gender, by the level of Korean fluency, everything was quite classified in more detail. So in the initial stage of interest into Korea, they depended on the ethnic community, but as they are more fluent to Korean, they used app, for example, Albamon. So this was one of the way to access the labor market. Of course, this could be varied from region to region, but for example, 경상북도, that is the reason with many universities concentrated, meaning that the immigrant students came to that region in a short period of time, meaning that there are no jobs left for them. So in that case, by group, they even had to go to different region for a part-time job. By country, male students from Mongolia took a part-time job, for example, for the company that helps people move their house. This is what actually they said to me without saying what. Because the Korean people would not be able to tell whether we are from Mongolia or we are Korean. So during the work, the employee of that company does not allow us to pick up the phone. So the male student from the Mongolia can do the job which contact and which touches the property of Korean people. So racial prejudice from the Korean people opens up a specific type of labor market for foreign students. And from now on,
then let's look at the discriminations that the foreign students are experiencing in Korea. For many interviewees, they have shared with us about various experiences they had in Korea. But in common, they said Koreans discriminate them against their mother country and the level of economy of their mother countries. So those from Bangladesh and others, it is well described by those students coming from Bangladesh. And here, the interviewee, he got a full ride and also very taking a huge pride because he is coming from a middle income family household in Bangladesh. And one day he was driving his own car in Korea, and one of the professors said that can you even maintain this car, this vehicle in Korea? He shared that experience. That means the intonation, the expression of the Korean professor, it means like it's absurd that you can make this vehicle here in Korea, thinking about your mother country. So as you can see in this slide, in this descriptions, the foreign country students, that means it is likely for them to enjoy at least middle income level of wealthness in their mother country, but they just Koreans try to determine the level of those foreign country students depending on their mother country as it is. The similar stories have been shared with us from many students, many interviewees, and so it is not only the discrimination outside the campus, but also inside of the campus. For example, their peers or their Korean professors, they try to be more, they try to be nicer to the students from Western countries and they try to be mentor for them, but they're less likely to be the mentor for the foreign students like me. And they also have very outrageous experiences in the campus, but that occasion is less likely compared to what they have been experiencing outside of the campus. So this bare race based discrimination, they have less likability to experience that inside the campus. And it is sad, but in Korea, in the campus, those foreign students don't have much opportunity to share or to have interactions with Korean students. That's why they don't have much opportunity to have the discrimination within the campus. And like I said, for those interviewees, they are doing the part-time jobs and they are experiencing the labor markets So they have happen to be exposed to that discrimination in the job market. For example, this is a narrative from a Mongolian student Coco. She had master degree and doctorate degree in Korea, staying in Korea for about 10 years. Staying here in 10 years, she was involved in many different part-time jobs, agricultural work to interpretation and translation. So have been exposed to many different job areas. While having interview with her, she said once they noticed I am from Mongolia, they said, "Are you coming here for money?" And I said, "I'm a student." Then they say, "Oh, you're a student." They try to be more nicer than. So it is ironical and very ridiculous because Koreans try to discriminate us against the purpose of our visit. If I'm a student, then they be nice to us. If I'm a diplomat, they try to respect me more. If I'm just a worker, they try to not respect me that much. So if I go to a hospital, they want us to show our identification, then I intendedly show my identification card showing that my status says D2, that means foreign student, then I'll be less discriminated because of my purpose of the visit. So Coco said, Korea, there's lots of discrimination in various levels, and also discrimination against workers is harsher than other kind of discrimination. But interestingly, this is something all the foreign students are knowing and well aware of. So for those non-Western or non-English speaking countries people, their way of meeting Korea and English speaking country people's way of meeting Korea are far different from one another. That's why many Korean people they are concerning because we have negative perceptions from the perspective of the foreign students when it comes to they meet Korea and get the experience and get the discrimination. Because in the past, Korean try to be nice for the students, but right now, even for the students, Koreans have negative perceptions and try to say, even if you are a student, you still came here for money. So because many foreign students first coming to Korea to learn something, but that is a deception. They just go to find job, and this is another frame that people try to put foreign students in. This is situation where we are being robbed of one way to be treated without discrimination because we're students. Still, students are discriminated harshly because of this kind of frame. Then let me talk about the negotiation of the identity for foreign students. So these people, they describe their memory about the discrimination and violence they have experienced. They not only express their desperation or frustration, but they try to have it as a learning lessons so that they can be better. So they try to reaffirm their identity to students because they're students, but it's a momentary thing. They ultimately will go to the job market that they have to have an identity as a worker. So they try to just experience about the discrimination they might have to experience later on. So one Mongolian student he has a part-time job by riding a train or bus about 2 hours to have a part-time job. By doing so, he say he learned patience and the endurance that he need to build. This kind of foreign students who is in their early 20s because they are young, so they said this experience made them learn about their level of and sense of independence and sense of um, learning and standing on their own. And other is a negotiation about their identity. There, he was working for a motel in Korea. By working 2 weeks, he was kicked out, but he was not paid well. So per day, they have about 40,000 won pay. But they couldn't get it. So he came back to motel to get his payment. But the owner of the motel he did denied to pay that. but he had to get it no matter what because this is really precious money. So he had to beg him and say, I'm a student, this is the necessary money for me to live in Korea. That then he was able to get the money. But many people, when they were interviewing, they were finishing their student period, they were working in Korea as a migrant workers. For some people, they try to hide their appearances intentionally. And this is the narrative from a Mongolian student, Empuya. She was a PhD student. She was an elite in Mongolia as a teacher, but coming into Korea during the vacation. She was working at a fish market restaurant, and Korean clients and customers there, they tried to do the sexual harassment to her, saying, "Do you have time? Do you want to play with me?" She was very she was very embarrassed by that experience, and she tried to hide her identity as a student. And also, other colleagues or peers in that restaurant working together, the Mongolian people, she also told those people not to expose my identity to other people. This is intentional hiding. By doing so, they intentionally not to expose. By doing so, they try to keep their dignity. And also, they try to keep their real self from their situation where they have to work. So, like this, so those student migrants, they were perceived as the more than a middle income family members to regenerate their classes by earning some capitals in the global culture. So they try to go and leap forward to the high class from middle class. That was the perception in the past, but in some of the emerging foreign study target countries, just like Korea, they are understood as a person who can do the low level and low skilled market workers. So in this study, I believe the Korean society, we have discrimination against students, migrants, and the worker migrants, but that discrimination level itself is really different. By doing so, we also can see the students, migrants, they also try to protect themselves by employing different level of techniques. And Toya, she also came here with his husband. By doing so, she can protect herself from that discrimination. But this dual identity, those students have to adopt. We have to accept that, and also only when we eradicate discrimination to them, then we can solve this problem. Thank you very much.